News of any company recording all analog direct-to-tape in 2025 is cause for interest. There have been a few companies that have been doing this, mostly in the jazz realm, that have come up in recent years. Kevin Gray's Coherent Recordings is one. Bird Box Records out of Italy, which I've covered on the channel, is another. And now we have a third, and it's called Analog Tone Factory. I had heard about Analog Tone Factory over the last year. Their initial release, Heart, was making the rounds in the audio circles. I never heard it. It is by Jerome Sabbagh, who is also the founder of Analog Tone Factory. So the first two releases featured Jerome, and this release is their third. It's called Keepers of the Eastern Door. And it is by Chris Cheek, saxophonist. Longtime viewers of my channel know that I am not a jazz musician. I am not even a jazz aficionado. I am simply exploring jazz through mostly reissues and mostly from the 50s and 60s. So contemporary jazz is something that really wasn't on my radar. I kind of avoided it. And when that's combined with an audiophile recording, I was like, let's see. Let's see how it is. You know, audiophile recordings have traditionally been really good sounding with mediocre music, especially if it's a direct-to-disc or something. The musicians are really under pressure to get it right in one take. And there's a lack of spontaneity and fluidity that happens in a direct-to-disc recording. However, this record is recorded live in the studio without overdubs, direct to tape. It's a 30 IPS tape. So the potential for a great sounding record is there. But how is the musicianship? That was my question. And I was a little apprehensive about going into this because I don't know a lot about the contemporary musicians performing today. But on this record, Chris Cheek is the leader and saxophonist, and he's joined by Bill Frisell, who I had heard of course. He is on guitars. We also have Tony Scherr here on bass and Rudy Royston on drums. There's, let's see, 8 compositions on this record. 3 are Cheek originals. There's also a couple of standards. There is a pop number from the Beatles, and 2 that are adaptations of classical music by Messiaen and Purcell. I thought that sounded really intriguing, and it was. Let's talk a little bit about the recording. This was recorded by James Farber at the Power Station in New York, live to half-inch tape, running at 30 IPS on November 8th and 9th, 2024. The record is mastered by Bernie Grundman directly from the analog tape. So this is an AAA affair. I have the one step here. So this record has been released in a standard edition and a one step. Now, when I got this one step, I was a little bit confused because normally we associate one steps with elaborate packaging and over the top materialism. And this came in a standard sleeve, very beautiful, and it's graced by photographs by Edward Curtis. So these are historic photographs, of course. And I called Jerome to ask him about this. And I said, I think maybe I have the wrong edition. I was expecting the one step. And he told me it is the one step. It is issued in a standard jacket. The reason is because not only economy of a small business, they wanted to really funnel what resources there are into the recording and to the artists. Also, the philosophy behind Chris Cheek and kind of ties in with the images on the cover, and his philosophy is less materialistic, more natural, more nature. And the idea of an over-the-top one-step really didn't appeal to the people at Analog Tone Factory. So they were able to do a one-step process for this record, but release it in a less expensive and more simple package. And I think that's an interesting thing. And knowing the background behind it really gave me an appreciation for their philosophy. This one-step retails for $70. There's also a standard edition at $40, and I believe a CD as well. It's also available on streaming services, and there may be a reel-to-reel tape also. About the music, the first time through, I liked it. It is the type of jazz that I enjoy. So there was nothing hard or difficult or edgy, nothing like that. Very beautiful playing from Chris Cheek. Beautiful sound from his saxophone. Very warm and inviting. I find musically it's very contemplative, beautiful, melodic, moves through these different pieces with grace and beauty, never drawing attention to itself, but very, very beautiful and pretty, but not lightweight at all. There are complex things going on in here, and the additions from Bill Frisell and the other players make this an engaging listen from start to finish. It took a few times, I have to admit, for it to sink in and for it to reveal its beauty to me. But once it did, I have become a fan of this record. It has some beautiful moments in it. I particularly liked the reworking of, it's called Lost in My Quiet. It's a reworking of a Purcell composition. Very, very pretty. Kino's Canoe opens this. It is very, very good as well. That's an original from Chris Cheek. Smoke Rings follows that. The Messiaen piece follows that. And you have On a Clear Day, which was a Broadway tune, but it's taken at a slower pace. It's very beautiful. The Beatles track, From Me to You, really surprised me that it could be adapted for this type of format, but it was really nice. I loved it. The sound is very, very good. Very warm, lush, beautiful sound. I found that it needed to be turned up quite a bit to snap into focus and come to life. The first time I heard it was in passing. I just had it on to kind of get familiar with it, and I didn't have it at a high enough level. So I thought, wow, this sounds a little recessed, except for Chris Cheek. The other players seemed kind of recessed a bit, but at the proper volume, everything snapped into focus. And as a result, it feels like a vintage recording in terms of placement and depth behind the players, but doesn't quite have the vivid intimacy, say, of a Blue Note recording or a Verve recording. It's not like that. It is much more polished sounding. And although you don't get cymbal sizzling and drum, really hitting hard, it's beautifully placed and beautifully present in the soundstage. And it sounds really, really good. Chris sounds magnificent. He's playing is very beautiful. The guitar really is a striking addition to this too. Bill Frisell's guitar, which I really have to admit I'd never been exposed to before, I absolutely fell in love with. This is a nice feature of this album as well. I mean, he is right up there with Chris Cheek, providing a lot of texture and color to these compositions. Overall, I would say do try to hear this album in any format you can. If you'd like to stream it first, that would be an easy way to get accustomed to what they are trying to do here. But to hear it in an all-analog format would be preferable, of course. And you have the $40 vinyl reissue and this one step. I want to say something about the pressing. So even the one-step pressing is not pressed on a special vinyl. It's on black vinyl, but it is pressed by Gotta Groove Records. Now I was like, "Oh, who are that?" I had heard of them, but I was like, "I don't think I've ever had a record pressed by them." And I feared the worst, to be honest with you. But I was very surprised. It is a beautiful pressing, and they did a great job with it. The mastering by Bernie Grunman was wonderful, of course. And overall, this is an easy recommendation for someone that wants to dip their toe into contemporary jazz and experience two masters of their craft um, doing something that is personal and affecting. There's a lot of philosophy behind the idea for this album, and I'm not going to go into that here. It would take too long, but um, it is a beautiful contemplative album that I think most audiophiles and jazz listeners will be very interested in. Those are my thoughts on this new release of Chris Cheek, Keepers of the Eastern Door. Let me know if you've ever heard it and what you think about this approach to recording. Until next time, I'm Scott for the Pressing Matters. Have a great day.